Hello, world! In my profession, that is what we call a tradition. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the case of Coding Jesus versus Thor. You might be asking yourself, yo, who the F this guy? First of all, rude, but totally fair. Allow me to introduce myself to you. I'm a senior software engineer and I've been coding for a living for over 24 years. I've contracted with companies like Disney, Niantic, Rovio, TikTok, and Paramount. I know my way around dozens of coding languages such as C, C++, C#, Java, JavaScript, Python, Ruby, Perl, PHP, Lua, and GML. There's more, but we'd be here for a while. In other words, I never stopped learning, and that's the mark of a true professional in my opinion. And most importantly, I'm an actual game programmer and technical artist. And I'm very familiar with Game Maker, unlike somebody. Basically, I eat, live, and breathe code every single day. Oh, and this little birdie beside me is Karma. She is my editor and producer. I also very much enjoy teaching on the side, as I've been placed in charge of teaching many interns and rookies on many of the projects that I've been placed on. So, I thought of this as a good opportunity to teach the public about an engine that is not very well known, and a chance to share my knowledge on this subject. I keep hearing people ask that they want to hear from a real GML expert about Thor's code. And so I decided to dig a little bit deeper into the code that Coding Jesus provided. And the more I looked into it, I realized that not only was Coding Jesus underqualified to speak on this matter, while pretending to be an expert, and most unforgivable, teaching bad practices, I also discovered he flat out lied about some things that were downright criminal. And he made a mockery of my industry that I thought the public should know about. So, this video will be about disposing Jesus as the fraud he is, and then we will dive more into Thor's code, where I'll provide suggestions and give some valuable feedback on GML most people appear to not know, thanks to the information that Coding Jesus is spreading. Let's begin with something basic, yet crucial. What is the purpose of a code review? A real code review is typically done, with consent, constructively, and for the betterment of a project or team towards a specific goal. Yeah, that's important. Code reviews are not meant to be for public humiliation or estimations of a skill level. And you cannot tell someone's skill level simply from a few lines of code. So let's ask ourselves, did Coding Jesus follow that standard?
Now, why am I picking on Thor here in particular? Well, so I thought to myself, wouldn't it be nice if I can address Thor's critique by finding code that he's written off-stream to really get into the details? So I decided to scour Pirate's website on the Wayback Machine and notice that he actually included his source code resources as early as 2018. Just to be clear, these are the resources for his demo version of Heartbound. I was able to extract the code that he's written using data.win and the Undertale mod tool, and I'd like to focus on that for today's code review.
Oh, well, we're off to a great start, aren't we? Okay, well, surely he offered some constructive criticism, right?
Because honestly, if I was claiming I'm a game developer with 20 years of experience, this would be embarrassing to have online. That is the bare minimum. That's what I would expect out of an intern that's fresh out of school. It's unexpressive. It's really spaghetti code, in my opinion. This is also a complete mess for a couple of reasons. I don't know why he gets so horny looking at this. And storyline array number. Oh my god. Literally anything would be an upgrade over what is written here. That's Development 101. You learn it in the first week of your new job as either an intern or a junior developer. It's extremely poor practice, and it's just a recipe for disaster. Whatever he's doing here is not optimal structure, because literally anything would be better than this. This would never ever be allowed in a production repository, and below what you'd expect of a bottom tier intern. One that is way, way better to whatever he has here. What does message 32 mean? What does message 65 mean? What does message 97 mean? And what are these dialogue options 2, 5, 6, 0? This is a culmination of my past couple of comments, all in one steaming pile of. Surprisingly, that is all the code that I can find in these game developer streams.
Jesus Christ! You practically broke every rule in the book! I didn't even think it was possible. I've seen bad code reviews, but good God, man! I guess that's another manual you didn't even read. Never in all of my years have I seen such atrocious behavior during a code review. The first rule of code review is don't be a jerk. Code reviews are meant to improve the code, not fuel egos or push personal agendas. You critique the code, not the person. You offer guidance, not humiliation. The goal is growth, collaboration, and better outcomes, not spectacle. But Coding Jesus did none of that. Not only was his review dismissive and unconstructive, but he critiqued a project written in GML, a language he is clearly not familiar with. And he's not a game developer, and it shows. Worse still, in his first video, it's very obvious he didn't even consult the official documentation. That's a rookie mistake, especially when reviewing code in a language outside of your own expertise. To anyone who actually knows GML, it is very obvious that most of his suggestions weren't even relevant to GML. Had he done his own due diligence and read the manual, he would have known that. Instead, he applied assumptions from other languages and contexts, offering advice that was either useless or outright misleading. Reviewing something you don't understand without taking the time to learn it yourself isn't just unhelpful, it's irresponsible. It misrepresents the work, disrespects the developer, and misleads the audience. In the next video, I'll be doing a full code review of Coding Jesus' code review, breaking down the do's and don'ts, providing in-depth analysis, and offering actual, meaningful suggestions that could actually help a junior dev improve. Because most of what Jesus offered wasn't constructive. It was just noise. The next topics I'm about to go over are just a taste of that incoming breakdown. But these next 2 points, they're what I found truly unforgivable. And you'll see why very soon. I was going to let this go. But then I saw how you, Coding Jesus, treated your students in your so-called mock interviews. Newsflash, Jesus. If you have to give a disclaimer that you don't want to teach one-year students because you've been accused of bullying or picking on them, maybe you're actually a bully, and you should change your teaching tactics.
Decent experience, but not like 2 years. I'm in like my 3rd year of software engineering. I took like a C++ class, and I worked on it a bit, but I would say like I'm still kind of cooked. But I do want to like see like what I get wrong and etc.
I don't really like bringing in students because everybody on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube starts crying when you guys get the first question wrong, and then they think like I'm bullying you and I'm out to try to kill your family.
But no, you've been doing it for a long time, using humiliation of your own students for clicks. Your code review of Thor and your abusive behavior is a pattern, and in fact, The fact that you have no problem preying on your vulnerable students completely disgusts me, especially because you pretend to be a saint. If you think coding Jesus is just criticizing Thor to be trendy, think again. He's long had a pattern of bullying behavior disguised as tough love, often publicly embarrassing students for views and exploiting their mistakes for profit. His free mock interviews are just that. They aren't acts of charity, they're content traps. The person being interviewed is the product. These sessions are filled with obscure gotcha-style questions phrased in a way that even seasoned professionals would deem irresponsible, and not representative of an actual interview. And I'm not the only one who's noticed this atrocious behavior either. They are not designed to help. The goal is to make coding Jesus look smarter, while making others look unprepared. Based on his repeated behavior, it seems his goal isn't to educate, but to elevate himself at the cost of his students. He discourages guessing, often saying things like, if you don't know, don't guess.
So the more you guys guess, instead of just giving up and saying, I don't know.
What teacher or interviewer ever does that? I don't know about you, but when I interview, I want to see if you can work out the problems you don't know. I want to see if you can think outside the box and stand on your own 2 feet. But he's not even asking those sorts of questions, or even questions you'd be likely to find in a real interview in the first place. He misrepresents what real interviews are like, and he gives harmful advice behind paywalls where no one else can see. Learning is trial and error, yet his approach discourages trying at all. But manipulation is nothing new for him. He's used to twisting facts and crafting a false image. Whether by staging half-truths, asking obscure questions that would be compiler or architecture dependent, or purposely omitting details to catch his students off guard, so he can have that gotcha moment for the content. The session's true intentions are a sales tactic, and to say, if you want to be a crack developer, like me, buy my courses. Even more concerning are the marketing tactics he uses that border on cult-like tendencies. Using terms like coding church.
Imagine you're in church. This is church. This is coding church. And the pastor's speaking at the front.
And true believers. The ones who pay to play.
Wow, did my viewership just go from 500 people to 30 people? Are these the 30 original disciples that have never left? Are these the 30 original disciples while everybody else was a false deceiver, false prophet? Is that fair? I just did a 1.5 hour stream where we learned infinite amount of new C++. And I think that, hey, maybe I deserve 4 memberships. Oh, he's a junior dev. Damn, okay. This guy has money. He has $4. I have some rich members. Shameless. I'm shameless. Yeah, I'm shameless. I did a 1 hour stream asking for 3 new members. I think that's...
And that's not even the least of coding Jesus' shameless behavior, showing that he'll do anything for the content. That's right. Does this look familiar? It should. He's only been constantly posting about it, trying to milk this as much as he can. Which would have been fine. But it's a complete lie.
It is 128 by 128 pixels. That's 16,384 position checks. He's doing perfect.
If it were to loop over the whole sprite, perhaps. But it does not.
Frame per light source. If he has multiple light sources or is trying to run at 60 FPS, you will feel the lag. Now, he actually checks collisions twice for each pixel, and he doesn't have any early exit should his second instance of that check not execute.
What did he say?
Now, he actually checks collisions twice for each pixel, and he doesn't have any early exit should his second instance of that check not execute.
He doesn't have any early exit. Then what is that break statement you're hiding? That is what we call an early exit, because it will exit the X loop. And it will continue on to the next line. But what's worse?
Light diffuse is 5. It's possible that he does an additional 4 iterations that returns false every single time. In the case that we have the exact same 128 by 128 pixel sprite, that is not just 16,384 checks. That's 98,304 checks at worst.
Even if this was all the code to this function, this math is wildly off because of this x++ in the inner loop. This means you will not be checking the same pixel 6 times. You will always be progressing through the sprite. He didn't even check his math. And he's been hiding this break statement from all of us, intentionally, because it's hidden in everything that he shows about this 2D ray tracing function.
I partnered with a professional game maker developer to test this assertion. We benchmarked his lighting system.
Ironically, this is actually what caused me to look more into this coding Jesus guy. I have repeatedly caught him hiding or modifying parts of Thor's code in his videos or shorts, all in order to feed his false narrative. Once or twice could be a mistake, but after 6 times it's clearly intentional, and also he could sell you his lies. Truly snake oil salesman behavior, and he might have gotten away with it too. But I couldn't help but notice that the shape of the code wasn't adding up. Literally. Go back and rewind if you don't believe me. One of these things is not like the other. Did you spot the difference? Isn't it odd how he only shows the full code sparingly? Not to mention he never zooms in fully, so it's always blurry. But yet, he constantly cuts out and copies this one piece here. Why would he do that? Because his narrative all along has been that Thor does not have an early exit. It's one of his many false claims. But in fact, Thor's code actually does, and it can be seen right there at the bottom. Yes, just after the part he cuts out. He's been purposely lying and hiding that from all of us. And it got me thinking, what a silly thing to manipulate. Then I thought, if he's lying about that, what else could he be lying about? And it turns out there's a whole lot. How about this? Surely you've all seen the little light show that he and Little Fish put on. It is also a complete lie, because they rigged the test. Here we have the infamous 2D ray tracing function, with supposedly n-cube complexity. This code is completely unmodified, exactly as Thor wrote it, and it's going to be used exactly as Thor intended it to be used. The only thing I have changed is I've added comments for our non-coding friends to follow along just a little easier. And I've added the same pixel counter that they did. Where this code differs from theirs, I didn't have to comment this out. I knew how the function runs, and I knew this was one of the optimizations. Now, a fuller explanation of how this code actually works from somebody who actually knows what they're talking about will be done in a future video. But for now, let's focus on the important parts. This value here is very important to the way that this algorithm runs. It's only intended to be around 4 or 8. Next, this break statement, the one they've been hiding, is also very crucial optimization to the algorithm. What this does is it will exit the loop it is contained in this case, that's the X loop. Meaning, our pixel scan will then continue on to the next line. So, let's see how the algorithm performs when it's used properly. Notice, As I move the window closer to the sprite, a rim light appears following the contours of the pixels of the sprite. And to prove that I am right, and that this is how the function is intended to be used, let's look at the game. Pay close attention to the curves of the character's face in the game. Look familiar? It's a rim light. It was never intended to be some silly software-shaded flashlight, as they claim. And much more. I can move around in the game perfectly fine without a frame drop. Because there's another optimization at play here, folks. If I'm not even in one of the lights, the function doesn't even run. This immediately discounts their for every light and every sprite and every pixel, for every frame, claim. Now, let's go back to the demo. We saw their benchmarks. So what did they do? This is the same 800 by 100 pixel sprite that they used. And it's still performing at 60 frames per second. So what did they do? They pushed the diffusion cycles all the way up, as high as they wanted, really. And as the diffusion cycles go up, the frames go down. So what value did they use? Somewhere around 800 or so. As you can see, that looks rather familiar. It was never intended to be used this way, though. It was always intended to be used as a rim light, effectively. But let's, for the sake of argument, and a thorough test, see how it performs on a larger sprite. You can see here on this 200 by 300 sprite, still performs at 60 frames per second. And I can up the values a fair amount. And we still don't lose very many frames. But it was never intended to be used at this size or scale. So let's go back to the realm of the pixels, where this function really shines. Now notice, I can push the diffusion cycles quite high, and we still have 60 frames per second. The function works efficiently as intended in the environment that it was intended for, and the way that it was intended to be used. We're even past 800. So, I have shown you irrefutable evidence that they rigged the test. As you can see, it is 2D ray tracing, or within the family of graphics programming, as it's technically closer to its cousin, ray marching, as it loops over the pixels until it hits something solid. The inner loop, however, simulates diffusion on the pixels, which is how light bounces off of surfaces in ray tracing. So it combines both techniques in order to simulate light wrapping around a round surface in 2D. which results in a rim lighting-like effect. In my opinion, it is pretty impressive and brave to be done at 60 frames per second inside of GameMaker, a program which at the time was an interpreted language and was notoriously known for very slow pixel operation speeds. This shows that Thor does at least have some level of technical art and graphics programming knowledge to be able to pull something like this off inside of GameMaker. True, it could still be optimized in a couple of ways, such as using a binary search method and backtracking or something of that sort. But Thor knows a very important lesson. It is irrelevant to over-optimize. If the algorithm performs optimally for the required task, it is efficient enough for its purposes. Over-optimization is its own rabbit hole, and it would lead to diminishing returns for the extra effort. It was a clever ruse, really, but despicable nonetheless. Or perhaps I'm wrong, and they didn't do it intentionally. They just couldn't read or understand the code. But I personally find that hard to believe. I detest liars, especially people who lie for clout. So which is it? You lied, or you were incapable of reading the code. The code you deemed below intern level, if I recall. Shouldn't you have been able to read the code easily then? Because I was able to. And I can almost guarantee anyone worth their salt, even an amateur, could read this code. Know why? I even had a one-year student look at this exact code, and she understood exactly what it was doing. So when Thor told you it was 2D ray tracing, you already knew that. But it did not fit your carefully crafted ruse. So instead, you feigned ignorance and knew someone wasn't likely to call you out on your shit because they would less likely believe Thor versus you. Confirmation bias is a bitch. It's a very strong thing indeed. But you've been caught red-handed. You, coding Jesus, in my opinion, are a liar, a bully, and a grifter. I'll give you one thing, though. You are quite good at your confidence games. But you are an insult to my industry. Any fool can spread a false narrative and make a believable story. But not all is as it seems on the internet, especially when there's something to gain from lying for clout. Words are cheap. Receipts are the proof. Treat others the way you would like to be treated yourself, or you might just be the next target of the internet's wrath.
But what I would say is judge me by my fruits. Judge me by my fruits. Don't just judge me by what I say, judge me by what I do. By what I do. Damn, 612 concurrent viewers. So we have more concurrent viewers than Pirate. I think I took all his subscribers. All the 100k that he bleeded, I think I just took them. Yo, do you guys give me permission to take his subscribers?
Well then, so-called coding Jesus. The handwriting is on the wall. You've been judged, and you've been called. You said, judge you by your fruits. And that's exactly what we intend to do.
Remember, everybody remember the golden rule. Don't be a fool, kicky guilty. Gold in my eyes, less in my thighs. Code in my hands, but I chose to rise. Slip through shadows, wearing a thin mask. Fool the world, but you know it wouldn't last. No one knows, no one knows. Judge me by my fruits, judge me by my fruits. Now I said, but what I do. Not a hero or a saint, fruits don't lie. No words to fake my past, it's written in the lines I break. Went for the gold, got cursed instead. Cold and red alarms in my head. Talk is cheap, receipts are proof. It's not what I say, it's a trail of truth. But remember the golden rule, don't be a fool, don't be a fool, don't be a fool. Who be guilty? Judge me by my fruits, judge by my fruits. Not by what I say, but what I do. I thought I could take it all, but the code always tells when it smells. Smells. Guilty. Blue in my eyes, legs in my path, cold in my hands, but I chose the wrath. Slip through shadows, wearing a big mask. Fool the world, but you know it wouldn't last. No one knows. Judge me by my fruits. Judge me by my fruits. Not by what I say, but what I do. I thought I could take it all, but the cold always tells when it smells. Bells. Bells. Where my eyes, lies in my path, lies in my path. Code in my hands, but I chose the wrath, chose the wrath. Slip through shadows, wearing a big mask. Fool the world, but you know it wouldn't last. Boom, boom, no one knows, no one knows, no one knows. Judge me by my fruits, judge me by my fruits. Not what I say, but what I do. I thought I could take it all, but the code always tells when it smells. Guilty. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Judge me by my fruits. Not by what I say, but what I do. I thought I could take it all, but the code always tells when it smells.